Welcome to Viking Preparedness. I'm Pastor Joe Fox. You know, I'm going to make a video here that's going to make some people mad, might make some of y'all scream, and it has to do with this horrible shooting that just happened in an elementary school. And, I'll just start out in saying that was obvious to me that that's a demonic activity going on there. But be that as it may. I just heard a guy on the radio, and I had to turn him off, talking about how guns should be stored, and obviously this guy's mother's at fault, and yada, yada, yada. And so what I'm about to tell you worked for me, but I'm not telling you to do this. The NRA would tell you not to do this. You know, any safety thing you read on the internet would tell you not to do this. And in fact, I'm telling you, don't do this, because honestly, you don't raise your kids like I raised my kids, and it just probably won't work for you. So that's my disclaimer. You know, we can read in the Word, raise a child up in the way he should go, and he will not depart from it when he is old. We need to discipline our children. Our children need to stop when we say stop. They need to do what they're supposed to do, even when we're not watching them. They need to be well behaved. And if your kids aren't, well, congratulations, you're like most Americans. But here's the deal. I was raised for a big part of my life overseas, and when I was young, very young, I lived in a house on stilts in a third world country where warfare was going on. We could hear battles at night. You can hear further at night, and when the sun would start going down, we could actually hear real battles. And my father had in his bedroom 2 submachine guns hanging on the wall. They were both loaded. And 2 handguns in holsters hanging on the wall. And he would take trips every now and then, and he would typically take one of the submachine guns and one of the handguns with him, and he'd leave the other 2 there for my mom. And here's the deal. We weren't allowed as children to touch them. We were forbidden to touch them. And you know what? We never did. But there they were, loaded. And my father taught me, when I was very young, to fire those submachine guns. Now, he held it, and I pulled the trigger, but I did fire them when I was very young. Then when I grew up, we moved back in the States, and my dad had a few guns, and he would keep them under his bed in his bedroom, and we were not allowed to touch them as children. Don't even go in there. Don't touch them. And whenever I wanted to see them, or my brother wanted to see them, we'd ask, and my dad would pull them out, and we'd go over the safety rules, and he'd show them to us. But we weren't allowed to touch them when he wasn't home. And you know what? We never did, because Dad told us not to. And so, I grew up, I got married, we had kids, and we had guns in the house, and we started thinking, how do we want to be with our children with guns? And you know what we did? We had loaded guns in the house, and we told our kids, don't touch them. And you know what? They never did. Whenever our children wanted to see a gun, and whenever they expressed interest in it, we'd get it out, we'd go over the safety rules, we'd show it to them, and we removed all the mystery from them. I'm not like some people who didn't let his kids have toy guns. My kids had toy guns, and they played with them, but not obnoxiously, and, whatever. You figure it out what that means. But, they played Army and stuff. I remember when my son was a toddler, and my wife had a handgun, and Glocks were kind of new. And one of my men had a Glock, and it was actually for his wife, a Glock 17 9mm, and they didn't like it because it kept jamming. And what they found out was it jammed because she was limp wristing it. And so Glocks will do that if you don't hold them pretty tight sometimes. And so it wasn't working for her. And they wanted to trade us. My wife at the time had a PPKS in 380. And they wanted to trade us straight up, the PPK for the Glock. And we wanted to do that because my wife wanted a bigger gun at the time. And we thought about it, but then we decided we didn't want a gun in the house where when it was chambered, all it took was pulling the trigger for it to go off with a toddler in the house. And with her PPK, she would keep it on safe, and that's what we did. And so we didn't get a Glock at that time. Fast forward. I have 3 children. They're adults, but those of you with kids who are adults know what I mean I still call them kids. And when my children turned 18, they all got a pump shotgun. I have a boy and 2 girls. And when they turned 21, they got a Glock. Now, my two oldest kids got up and moved out of the house at a time when my wife and I got really busy. And so there was a lot of time when our 14-year-old daughter was home alone. And she's little, you know. She was really little then. And so we're like, hey, she needs some kind of protection. And so I taught her how to fire a Glock. I bought her Glock for her early. She's still not 21. And I trained her how to shoot it, and she shot it fine. And that 14-year-old girl had a loaded Glock on her nightstand until she went to college. And they won't let her have one in the dorm, and so she doesn't have one in the dorm, and it's locked up in the gun safe now. But, you know, some people would be aghast. Oh, you let a 14-year-old have access to a loaded firearm? Heck yes! How else was she supposed to defend herself from some bad guy, you know, like me? You know, firearms are great equalizers in the hands of someone who is disciplined and well-trained. Now, should you do that with your kids? No, because your kids aren't disciplined enough. So that's what I did. We store guns in our house, not all of them, but we have self-defense guns that are loaded, ready to go in the house. When people come over with kids, we lock them up. We lock the guns up. We got to lock the kids up. But we lock the guns up so, you know, inadvertently, because I don't know how other people raise their kids. And so we keep it safe that way. But it's all how you raise your kids. It's your house. If you say your children aren't good enough for that, you're right, they're not. If you didn't raise them to be able to be around loaded firearms, then you can't. I was with a group of survivalists many years ago, and these were people from all over the place. And we got together for several days for a camp out, and some parents did an experiment. They were sitting around in the parent, you know, chairs, and kids are kind of running all over the place. And they took an SKS, an unloaded one, a rifle, and they set it on a low trailer over there all by itself where they could keep an eye on it, but kids were running around playing, and they wanted to see what the kids would do. And do you know those kids? Man, they were good kids. Several children came up and told their parents, Mommy, there's a gun over there. You know, the NRA has a program, Eddie Eagle, stop, don't touch, leave the area, tell an adult. Great things to teach a young kid. And a lot of kids did that. Do you know not one child touched that rifle that was laying there? And it was a test for them to see it. And so these people knew how to raise their kids. But hey, I don't want to hear, oh, you've got to keep your guns locked up and separate from the ammo. Well, what good is that? You know, come on. Raise your kids right. Raise your child up in the way he should go, and he will not depart from it when he is old. I will see you out there.